Hello everybody and welcome back to artofdino.com and saveearth.us for Tartarian Tales number 96, and this is going to be called Tartarian Tidbits, taken from this book where I did some translating, and I translated a bunch of pages, and then instead of just reading them all, I took a bunch of clips. They all got jumbled in order, but I want to read them because they are cool, and they all contain little tidbits of information that I found relevant, and I think you all will enjoy as well. So I want to start with this one right here, with this double eagle with the crown in the middle, which explained right here. They call their leader Velikoi Knes, or Grand Prince Tsar, Tsarist Majesty, and some claim that this word comes from Caesar. He also bears, like his Imperial Majesty, a double eagle in his imperial coat of arms and crest with folded wings. Above its head are only two, but three crowns, indicating not only his Russian kingdom, but also the two Tartar kingdoms of Astrakhan and Kazan. Hanging from the eagle's body is a shield, in which a neuter with a spear like a dragon slaying can be seen as if from a ragged, broken-off section, which besides the eagle also indicates the size. Such an eagle was first introduced by the tyrant Ivan Vasilievsky out of ambition by boasting of being of the blood of the Roman emperors. His interpreters and some of the German merchants in Muscovy also call him an emperor, but because the Russians also call him King David, Tsar, the word rather means a king. So, again, very interesting. And then I'm just going to keep going because there's so much to do here. But I found that very good to hear about this, because you always see that and you always see the middle one in between, but never knew it was from Astrakhan and Kazan, the two Tartar kingdoms. Massive, amazing, beautiful places. So this was a little bit of a poem here. It says, "What about the thing with certain hope, the old way? They are feigning knowledge found in ancient books." So I am just going to read these things. I don't have the time to assemble everything in the perfect order. So I'm showing you now the things that I'm going to be reading, and after that you'll see some images of engravings and different things from the book and some translations. But I'm going to go one by one and read these little clips that I found, and they're not going to probably match what is on the screen, but you guys can check it out. And I can't justify putting in tons of effort and hours into this anymore. I just really can't. But I do love discovering things, and I do love sharing and teaching others, so that I can't stop with. Just the effort I gotta save on my own account, unless YouTube starts pumping me back again, but I doubt they will. So here we go. They are feigning knowledge found in ancient books. This says, "The world of Philippi will be defended by the origin of the Caphar, who will avenge the world's just war of iniquity. Here he will slay the Celts, the Getae, and overthrow the Britons. Whoever will raise arms against such a leader, and even unjustly depriving him of the royal diadem, will force the Turks to return to the true faith. In the study of the Nanites and the fens of the cult, the eternal triune deities of God are established. When 3 times 5 have passed since Christ was fed, and twice 3 times 10 will be 1 year from the sun. This is what I command you, O ruler of the heavens, the highest of Olympus, through your prophetic words, the Aft. A new king will arise, who will conquer the whole world, and with his mother's honor he will tame the eternal plague. From the infernal rushing to the high mountains, and gentle without deceit caves, poor in wealth, rich in morals, rich in the chest, for the merits of which God will be the augur. Here he will place the 6 denans on the Roman apostolic lambs. Rome will bear the burden, and he will draw to Christ the fervent followers of Muhammad. Thus for one cause there will be one shepherd. The greatest of the Austriaca will be born here of Caphar, origin, who will create for us the golden filth of Saturn." So I don't know, again, if the translation is right on the money or not, but I found that to be very interesting. And that was from this book too, which has a lot of interesting stuff. I'm going to keep going. There's this one picture of the mountains, which I will show you right now. So I found this interesting. So here we go. It says, "The mountain lies to the right, is very high and rises precariously from the shore, and appears very airy, for it has different slopes like benches, one above the other, of red, yellow, and blue sandstone, which look like old walls, upon which stood fir trees planted in an orderly fashion. What the Russians told us about this mountain can be seen from the following sonnet. As you Russians do not know, unassigned, what no one among us knows, is this the same mountain on which once lived a clever dwarf, and a maiden also of the arrival of the giants, of which he is still hot and long to Nissen, the far-flung city? What wonder confirms your words? Does nothing testify to her strength, her life and her deeds, of the daughter of Odrisen? No, forgotten time has taken everything away. I marvel at the deeds and honor this place, which almost fills me with half fear with its wilderness. Like a cloud, a fiend boldly throws up its head. Thus acts a wild man and trusts the chorus of gods, who fear him no more than laugh at him. So I thought that was very interesting because it just shows that, again, this thing right here, these levels, these steps, they were recognized in this time, 1600s, mid-1600s, as being walls, as being built in different layers of sandstone, different things. And what is in that? There is definitely something in that. And you'll find out what I mean by that as I read a couple more. So here we go. I'm going to keep reading these clips. The Poles, however, set fire to the city in various places, as they did not want to see their wives, children, and other possessions go up in smoke, had to run to save them. From this arose such a fire and bloodbath that within 2 days the large, far-flung city of Muscovy was engulfed. The castle and the stone church arcades were surrounded. Over 200,000 Muscovites perished, and the rest were driven out. And just imagine the sheer magnitude of that. If 200,000 Muscovites perished, there must have been a battle between 1 million people. And that we know nothing about what that is like in this modern time. And thank God, to be honest, because that's freaking a lot of extinguished miracles of life. And it happens all the time back in these things. They were taking out hundreds of thousands in battle all the time. It's intense. So I wanted to include that here. I found, these are just clips of things that I found interesting again. Thereupon, the castle, the Grand Duke's palace, churches, and monasteries were completely plundered, and an incredible amount of gold, silver, pearls, precious stones, and other valuables were carried off and sent to Poland. The soldiers, as Petraeus writes, are said to have loaded their muzzle-loading cannons with large coins and fired them into the air out of sheer arrogance. Such great plunder, and among other things, a very large unicorn, so adorned with large diamonds and other 32 stones, the Russians still lament to this day. What? So that is just, again, another thing that I had to include in here, because a unicorn adorned with large diamonds and stones, and the Russians are still sad about it. So, because I do believe unicorns existed 100%. There's no way they would have just made that up. Absolutely not. So here's another one. Again, total random. Mordau is called Moras in Turkish because around and beside this village are large marshes and swampy pools, which, due to many springs, do not freeze even in the harshest winter. Therefore, in winter, most of the swans are caught there, and their down feathers are used for chess betting. In this village, as well as in other surrounding villages, lives a people whom they call Padar. They have a peculiar language, though somewhat related to Turkish and Persian. They are of the Turkish faith and also have peculiar superstitious customs. They leave hot food standing until it cools down sufficiently on its own to be eaten. No one is allowed to blow on it, and if a stranger should do so improperly in their houses, the food must be thrown away as unclean. And I came across that one because I always will blow my daughter's soup or stuff like that, and it made me think, like, that makes sense because you're blowing germs into their food and all this different stuff. But I thought that was interesting. So again, it's more just little Tartarian tidbits collected. You can find them all over the place. Things that kind of connect the old world to the present, which is kind of what I was going for. Here's on page 420, man. Something about the rock, which they call Zerkish Barmak, a finger, because it rises high above other mountains like an upturned finger. A path winds its way up from the valley to the ridge, but since it was unknown to us, we climbed it with great danger. We found the air at the top so cold that the grass and herbs, which stretched for quite some length, were covered in ice like candied sugar, whereas down below at the caravanserai, it was warm and pleasant weather. One could clearly see from the old oars and pieces of masonry on the mountain that a magnificent building, an excellent fortress, must have stood there. Again, they're seeing this in the 1600s. It's been happening forever. At the foot of the sublime Barmak rock is a plain of 50 square rods, which was fortified with thick walls and 4 roundels. In the middle of this plain was a very deep bricked-up well, and not far from it were 2 graves lined with large round stones. In particular, on the northern part and at the base of the rock stood a large section of wall with roughly hewn stone blocks, which must have been a fortified castle. From there one could reach, by means of several hewn steps, almost to the summit of the 3 rocks, where there was a specially hewn vault in which one could take refuge for the third time. This fortress was built by Alexander and destroyed by Tamerlane, where it may be. Some of us climbed the rock and bound ourselves to one another in sincere and lasting friendship. We broke off some fig trees which grew here and there on the old walls from the stone ridges, and went back down by the right path. Meanwhile it had rained below, while we had the most beautiful air up on the mountain, and saw only a mist as clouds below us. Again, an ancient world where I think all of these mountains, all of these things that we come across now have been just slowly degrading from built up architecture and beautiful architecture in its prime to destruction, battles, nonsense, whatever, time that have just taken it down and down to the point where they were in the period where they could recognize this ancient stuff. Nowadays, we don't think anything of it, and we have science telling us that it's from glaciers or it's from blah, blah, blah. Nonsense. So here we go. The most memorable thing to be seen here was the old royal palace, which as a fortress with strong walls of large ashlar stones, stout walls, and square towers, of which some gaps still stood, was surrounded in a square. The most beautiful emerald or gate there was the Mashaik, in which Sultan Muhammad Chadabendi lies buried. It was all elegantly built, had 3 gates, whose height is said to surpass that of the gates of St. Mark in Venice, and I have a feeling a lot of ancient destroyed buildings surpassed that. They just kept that because they wanted the most powerful one. But I have a feeling that diminished by so many back in the day before they destroyed it all. So surpassed that of the gates of St. Mark in Venice, but not of iron, as others write, but of polished and damascened steel and iron. The one and largest vault which stands opposite the Maidan, they say, cannot be opened, no matter how many people try, unless these words are spoken to it. Biask Ali Buksha. Open yourself out of love for Allah or Ali, so that it will then move so easily on its hinges and hooks that even a child could open it. And imagine that, a tech that just can make a massive door light by words, by uttering a phrase. And I don't put it past them. I don't see this as myth. I see this as something that was possible in the etheric mastery of the old world. The vault was covered with white and blue glazed stones, into which large inscriptions and all sorts of festive figures were fired, and rose very high, converging in the middle as a round tower. That sounds amazing. It was divided at the top by a metal grill, so that there was, as it were, a separate choir. On it lay many old Arabic books, some of which were 5/4 of an ell long and almost an ell wide. So an ell is a yard and a quarter. So these are many old Arabic books, some of which were 5/4 of an ell long and almost an ell wide. It sounds like a giant to me. The letters were and maybe the giants were Mohammedans in Arabic. And that's why they wanted to get rid of them. The letters were finger lengths, and a line around each one was very diligently written in gold and black ink. Amazing. Several leaves of these came to me, which I still keep in my gracious Lord's library, for there is a passage from the Alquran in which the beginning of a funny fable about some devils is contained. For amusement, I will extract this from the Persian paraphrase, Al-Qurani. I think I have that clip. We'll see. I have an interesting clip I want to say. Yeah, here it is. When God drove the devils out of heaven and locked it tightly shut again, the devils nevertheless wanted to know what was happening in heaven. So some of them gathered together at night, climbing one upon another until the highest one reached heaven. There he heard everything the angels had said about Mendez's life and happiness. Afterwards, the devils made this known to humans through magicians and soothsayers, which is very interesting. If magicians and soothsayers, and then maybe this is just what they're claiming as propaganda of the time, but magicians and soothsayers were spying on the angels and gods in heaven and learning their magic and bringing it down. The devils were bringing it to them. Very interesting concept. But when God noticed this, he shot a star called Shihab in Arabic at the head of the highest devil. This star immediately passed through all the devils and burned them all in one heap. According to this, other devils have also endeavored to this day, by the same meager means, to eavesdrop on the angels, to explore the secrets of heaven, and to reveal them to humankind. However, if the angels see them, they are punished with the same sentence and destroyed. Therefore, when the Persians see the meteor, Stalam Cadentem, or as ours call it, the star, they immediately begin out of devotion and joy. Imagine that. And imagine if that's what comets are. They're God. It's a battle between heaven and the devils trying to get them. And the devils could be the people with like Elon Musk's and them trying to get to the these places, trying to get to the answers, trying to do something, trying to do what they did to this world, to the other realms. I wouldn't be surprised. And if they are trying that, I hope that the outer worlds fight back, because I'm sick of this. I want the old beautiful stuff back. So here we go. Let's see. I did that one. This is another random one. The tower on the same building was octagonal and surrounded at the top by a wide walkway. On this walkway stood 8 small turrets as palisades, which could be climbed by spiral staircases in front of the temple. In front of the temple was a large square brick-lined fountain, whose water was channeled from Mount Kedar. Beyond it was a beautiful large garden adorned with many neatly arranged tall and short trees and a tall gazebo. No less worthy of being seen in the city is a very large church, which Shah Ismail I is said to have had built. One enters it through a very high gate, upon which stands a round tower. Upon passing through it, one first encounters a tall pyramid, somewhat dilapidated at the top. Interesting. Around it stand 8 rather thick marble columns. Passing these, one comes to the mezid, which is also very large and high vaulted, decorated all around with many brick pillars, arches, and passageways, and in the center has a magnificent cathedral. On this building is also a beautiful large garden in which a tower is spiked at the top with various soffits like a pyre. So what? That's just talking about one of the ancient buildings that we have with a garden on the top and huge passageways, a pyramid in the middle with a dilapidated top. I wonder if that was destroyed in a battle when the evil took over and some reset, or again. But all of these amazing, built by Shah Ismail I. He built this church within another cathedral within who knows. Again, I just love the imagery of some of these clips. Here's another one right here. It says, God protects us from the devil. They will all be burned, and we will be set free, and so much of this Mohammedan poem. At the back of the aforementioned temple, when one wants to go to the mehrab or altar, the tomb of Sultan Muhammad Chodabendi can be seen through a beautiful grill. This grill is considered a large piece of art, made almost arm's length thick of pure Indian steel, and all the pieces are so tightly joined that no joints can be seen. It is brightly polished and damascened. They say that it was hewn from a single piece. It is said to have been made next to the gates in India, and indeed to have taken 7 years to make, but to have been brought here by the aforementioned Sultan. We also find 20 metal pieces of firearm in the same emerald, among them a large mortar. The pieces were each on 4 wheels, 4 of which were cannons, the others culverins. The balls, however, were made of marble. They are said to have been used to bombard the former fortress. On the mortar stood a double eagle, and above it the letters A.Z, but brown or A. So I thought this was interesting because they're talking about balls of marble, which used as like cannons were shooting balls of marble, which I found that very interesting, and I could see that causing a lot of destruction, then breaking up into different pieces, and again adding to the rubble. But also before that was that grill, this large grill, a large piece of art that took 7 years to build, 7 years to make. And think about the size of these massive buildings. That's one piece, genuinely small, of art that took 7 years to make. So again, we came from artists. We are all artists. At one point, this realm was packed with artists. You don't live in a society where people are spending 7 years creating artwork, and every single one of their inner buildings is lined with art that takes years and years and years to do and make and forge. So amazing. Another just proof that we are all artists again, and just different kind of things leading to that great realization. Here's another one. It says, for the Sultanate of Perfar, who once ruled all the kingdoms, the Persians, by way of the south and west, inhumanely destroying and with inexorable ferocity destroying at least cities and towns and religious places, and rather by fire, as some might believe, inspired a certain divine deity, spared the ruins of the Mohammedans, which are still seen to be the most beautiful structure, that the cruel fury of Tamerlane, though he had not yet reached all, as well as this beautiful city, had not yet been left untouched, out of the special devotion of the Mohammedans, the attempted funerals and church services were left untouched. Not far from the aforementioned church, there still stands a very high and wide gate made of hewn stone between 2 pilaster towers, 27 fathoms high, artificially constructed. That was what got me in this clip. It seems that it was a triumphal arch, but it is quite dilapidated. But the fact that they said artificially constructed made me wonder, Was there a time when, again, artificial intelligence was back, or artificial constructions, or like artificial plaster things were being made or something? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what this means, but 27 fathoms high, artificially constructed. I don't know what that means in 1663, but maybe you do. The inhabitants of this city, of whom there are hardly 6,000, are not allowed, as some report, to go to another place during the winter because of the great cold. They were surprised that this was written of them, since there is no place in Persia from which they could drive the cold away as easily as the hike. If so, in several places on and between the mountains where there is not much wood and the cold is somewhat severe, one does not leave the area entirely, but only from the ordinary rooms into the warm cellars. Such places are said to be found around the region of Erewhon, which is called Daratekis, because of two high mountains between which it is situated, and in the most important villages, Arpa, because the cold is very severe there in winter. People seek refuge in the cellars dug deep into the mountains, which can serve them both against the great cold in winter and against the great heat in summer. And that is the zinger. People seek refuge in the cellars dug deep into the mountains, which can serve them both against the great cold in winter and against the great heat in summer. And this adds to my thought that, again, they were carving the underground cities and carving the underworld and carving into mountains and doing all this amazing things to stay warm. And that was how they were able to survive when they had probably civilizations underground. It's easy to continue your winter events when you have things underground in a civilization that has everything figured out. Everything would know this. So they are prepping for floods. They're prepping for the Great Flood. They're prepping for, of course, they're going to be able to prep for winter. So again, I found that very interesting. And some referred to it as places where they stored food, but places to seek shelter. And again, against the heat in the summer and against the cold in the winter. You stay warm if you're underground. These ancients knew that 100%. So I've got, I think, two or a couple more. Around Tirabob's burial place, many caves and chambers were hewn into the same mountain, in which the pilgrims camped and made sacrifices. Some were so high above the ground that one could not easily reach them without a ladder. The three of us helped each other, not without danger, up one on a steep cliff. Could have been giants there before. In it were 4 spacious chambers, beds, and mangers, all hewn into the rock. We found, indeed with astonishment, that this hard rock had small shells embedded in its vault. Indeed, in some places the rock was as if it had been melted together from shells and sand. We saw similar things later on our return journey at the Caspian Sea, entire mountains and hard rocks, stone of mussel shells. More of those below. So again, melted shells, different places hewn into rock, carved into rock, embedded into rock, melted into rock. Who knows what these were? If these mountains and stuff could have been living at one point, which could have made them easier to carve into. And then as time goes on, they die and they harden and things. And I wouldn't be surprised. There's so much we don't know that we have to figure out. And again, with the seashells in there, did they make that? Or is that from some kind of melt event? Catastrophe, some kind of flood that then bombarded with some fusion fire. I don't know. But again, interesting. In the next one, in the front of the village next to Abraham's burial, there is a very deep vault underground, 52 feet long and 20 feet wide, well constructed with ashlar blocks, in which they store snow, egg, and water in winter, and use it for themselves and their livestock during the summer, since there is little good water there. Again, another good use of underground, keeping their livestock in there in the winter. And again, that is what I think the Paris, New York, all those cities with underground metropolises everywhere, they would go underground in the winter, and you could have your life. You can have a normal life without dealing with the weather and the nastiness that comes with it. You just go below it and things are normal. I love that reality. I wish we had that here. I remember when I was checking out UVM a long time ago, they had underground tunnels so you could get to the building, because I was like, I'd never go to this school. It's way too cold. But they were like, oh, there's underground tunnels that stay warm and you can go through them. Interesting. Again, they were everywhere. This whole world was crafted out by others. Here we go. Another one. Page 134. For another 14 days afterwards, everyone, both distinguished, common and old, carried dyed eggs. This is Easter. Countless egg vendors stocked the streets, selling these boiled eggs decorated with all sorts of colors. So this is a long-time old treat. When they meet each other in the streets, they greet each other with a kiss on the mouth and say, Christos was Kraft, that is, Christ is risen, to which the other replies, Woiften was Kraft, he is truly risen. Nor will anyone, whether male or female, of high or low rank, refuse another such a kiss and greeting alongside a dyed egg. The Grand Duke himself instructed his distinguished courtiers and servants to distribute such Easter eggs. Indeed, he also had the custom of having an egg alongside a sheepskin on Easter night before he went to early Mass, to open the prison and hand each prisoner, of whom there were always a great number, an egg in a sheepskin. He himself called out to them that they should rejoice, for Christ had died for their sins and had now risen again. Thereupon he had the prison closed again and went to church. During this holy Easter season, not only good friends and houses, but also the common breweries, beer halls, meeting houses, and brandy houses, both by clergy and laity, women and men, were diligently visited. They became so full that they were occasionally seen lying in the streets, and everyone had to throw the poor onto carts or sleds and take them home. Because of this, many murdered and stripped bodies were sometimes found on the streets in the morning. However, the patriarch was supposed to curb the excessive disorder in the visiting of the breweries or taverns. Just a little Easter treat for you right there. I found that to be interesting. Again, the dyed egg. So who would have thought that that's been such a long thing? I can't even believe that, but very funny. Another one, page 46. On October 8th, we had the third secret audience with the Swedish envoys for 2 hours. On the 12th of this year, Her Tsarist Majesty rode with her boyars, knights, and soldiers of about 1,000 men, accompanied half a mile outside the city to a church pilgrimage. The Grand Prince rode alone, had a whip in his hand. Behind him, the boyars and Niemen in one rank was magnificent to behold. The Grand Princess followed with the young princes and princesses in a large wooden carriage, decorated with scrollwork, covered with red cloth on top, and hung with yellow taffeta on the sides, which was drawn by 16 white horses. Amazing. Behind this came the Tsarist lady's entourage, 22 wooden carriages painted green and likewise covered with red cloth, as were the horses' reins. The carriages were tightly closed so that no one could be seen inside unless the wind happened to tear open the curtain, as I was fortunate enough to experience on Her Majesty's behalf. As the carriage passed, I beheld her face and clothing, which were very exquisite. On the sides walked over 100 strellies with white staffs, clearing the rushing crowd from the way. The people, who greatly love and highly respect their rulers, bid them good fortune and blessings with special devotion. Very cool. Again, very just unique, just amazing. This is just a different world. The respect that these people had for their leaders is pale, is just crushing compared to the way we think. Does anyone have any respect for anyone in American government at all? Like, some people still might like have an ultimate respect for Trump, but is there anyone that like anyone that you've ever wanted to revere like this? No. It's because they all stink, and these people nowadays are nothing compared to what they used to be, and that goes on a lot of levels. So here's the last one I will read right here. It says, before our departure, he had his wife and another relative, both very young and beautiful and exquisitely dressed, come forward. They were followed by a very handsome attendant to further enhance their beauty. These women had to each drink a bowl of brandy from the envoy's heart, place it in his hands, and bow towards him. The Russians consider it the greatest honor to show that the guest was dear and welcome. If the friendship and trust are great, he is not even allowed to kiss their mouth. More will be said about this below. On May 31st at 1 p.m. we departed from here and rode until evening for 4 great miles to John's Valley, where Baron John Scythian had indicated he was building a town. The church was mostly finished. Interesting. There was a triple echo or reverberation there, with which we amused ourselves for a good time that night through our trumpeter, because we could not sleep due to the large number of mosquitoes. Here we have, because there are many marshy places, the first and greatest affliction and trouble of the day from large flies and horseflies, which gave us and our horses large bumps, and at night from mosquitoes, which we could not defend ourselves against, except with smoke, which also made our eyes and sleep difficult, even far away. So again, mosquitoes, they've always stunk. But I found that interesting. Baron John Scythian was building a town, and the church was mostly finished. What is that all about? And a triple echo is also pretty cool. And they were testing it out with a trumpet. I love that, because that's exactly what I would do. And every time I hear an echo, I test it out, and it's amazing. And so again, I feel a kinship with all of these people in all of these clips, and I found everyone to be kind of relevant to modern life. And so I hope you all found these interesting as well. There's a nice little collection here for you all to enjoy. Bless you all, and share your comments below. I'd love to know what you all think. Thank you all for checking this out from artofdino.com and saveearth.us.